All right, my friends, J.R. Dukes with you. Appreciate everybody joining me today. I just hit the play button, so we should be live any second on all the streams. Bear with me as I check everything out. Come on in, introduce yourself, let us know how you're doing today. I'd like to always know where you're at, where you're from. It's always interesting to see friends and folks from all over the world. If you haven't subscribed, good time to subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button. It helps other people find this particular broadcast, and they can benefit from the message that I have. If for the individuals that do not know me, I'm J.R. Dukes. I am all about preventing and stopping indoctrination. My goal is to have a conversation with you, your friends, your family, so that we can expose the truth. The legacy media, the woke individuals that we live among today have us all thinking we're nuts, we're crazy, and that's not true. We're at a very serious time in our country, and it is nothing to snooze about. We all have to take active roles and do what we can to elect the right people to office, hopefully starting with President Donald Trump, and turn around this nonsense that's going on. All right, we already got Sapphire in the house. Thanks for joining us today, as always, my friend. By the way, if you would like to join, let me go ahead and type that in the comments here. If you would like to join today, feel free to do so. Let me put the instructions in here so everybody has it. And then this is going to be the link that you click. You just have to have a camera, some type of microphone, and obviously click on the link right there, and that's pretty well all you need. Zach, yeah, I knew there was some tornadoes and stuff going on. Live tornado watches and warnings out of state. Yeah, I know there's a big chunk of the country right now, my friend, that is having issues. So I hope you stay safe. Hope everybody else is taking precautions accordingly. I think here in Florida, we're supposed to get a chunk of that weather here tomorrow. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, looks like everybody's doing good on Facebook, on X. We're broadcasting on Twitch and obviously YouTube. Appreciate everybody being here. I know people are going to start filtering in as we go along. I wanted to tell you a couple things. We have a lot to talk about today. A big news day. Lots of interesting things going on. So we're going to see how much of it we can get through. It is amazing to see the nonsense that goes on in the news today. I literally generally have Fox News on with one of the other liberal stations on, and generally CNN. Well, former President Donald Trump was making remarks earlier today that are obviously something of newsworthiness, extreme importance, and he was basically talking about immigration, and he had a ton of police officers around him, and I believe he's up in Michigan. It's obviously going to be one of the main battleground states that is going to be very determinative in this upcoming election. So guess what? Fox News obviously carried the event, carried it live and unedited. CNN did not even mention it. They mentioned it earlier in the day that he was going to give a speech, but they did not even mention his speech. They just had some other type of programming on where they were just slamming Donald Trump each and every way they possibly can. It's just shocking. It's just shocking the way that they think they know what is important and what we should be told. Their story basically would say something like this. We know what Donald Trump is going to say is a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of lies. And we're just not going to broadcast those lies. And it's just shameful, despicable. And no wonder why they're hurting. No wonder why CNN has already cut back their main office in downtown Atlanta and moved back to the original office that Ted Turner started in right there on I-75 back around 1980. Now, they sold it to all of us as a great thing that they were consolidating and moving into a more comfortable type headquarters. But make no mistake about it, the viewership at CNN is down. And the irony here, I think it's great for me, but individuals like me, you know, the small guys talking about the news, broadcasting news, repeating the news, talking about the news, in the future, like between the next 2 to 5 to 10 years, the majority of Americans are going to be getting their news from sources like yours truly. It's just the way the country is going, and CNN is a prime example of that decline. And I will keep everybody apprised as that keeps unfolding. But it's just like they have a formula that's no longer working the way that it was working prior to maybe 1995, 1998, something like that. And they refuse to reverse course. They are sold on it, and they're just going to write it out. It's just very frustrating on some level, but it is what it is, and I feel sorry for their shareholders. So we have to talk today also about, let's see, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Man, is he ticking off a lot of Democrats. They are not happy people. They are pretty PO'd because obviously he has entered the race. Make no mistake about it. The Democratic Party is a very, very nostalgic party, and they love their Kennedys, and they love the name Kennedy. It doesn't matter that his whole family has come out against him. The fact is, RFK is well on his way to being on each and every ballot in the United States. He has a running mate now that is a very wealthy woman. I believe she was the wife of one of the co-founders of Google or something like that. So she's got pockets full of cash, and she is not afraid to spend it. And that's exactly what they're doing, and it's going to be interesting. And we're going to talk about this here in a minute as to who's going to benefit more out of this, Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. It's not Donald Trump that's going to be disenfranchised from this. As a matter of fact, clearly RFK is a Democrat, and Joe Biden is not happy about this. They are very worried about it, despite what they may be telling each and every one of us. It's just not the case. Also, we have the border crisis still going on in its wonderful glory. I am just literally shocked how Joe Biden, his administration, constantly now is trying to remind the American people. I guess if they say it long enough, they think that it's going to be true somehow. They're going to start believing their own lies. But their story is the following. It's Donald Trump's fault that the border is in the crisis situation that it is currently in. They've only recently began to use the words like crisis. And that's what it is. It's a very serious crisis at the border. It is essentially open, and we don't know who is coming through and into our country. Extremely concerning. They want you to believe it's Donald Trump, that he killed this last bill because President Joe Biden wants us all to believe he needs another law. Can you believe that? He needs another law, y'all. That's what he says. He's got to have another law in order to secure the border, and he needs more funding. That is just nonsense. They had Mayorkas just earlier today on Fox News. They were playing a clip of him saying, we have reversed so many policies of Donald Trump, we wouldn't even know how many we've reversed. That's exactly what Joe Biden did on his very first day of office. He killed the Keystone Pipeline that ticked off Canada real good. And frankly, a lot of Americans like me, it was going to bring all that oil sands, remember, from Canada, all the way into America and be refined, I'm assuming somewhere in Pasadena, Texas, or some other refinery along the route. Well, Joe Biden literally killed it with a stroke of a pen. Additionally, he stopped the border wall, the Trump border wall. He just stopped it cold. As a matter of fact, they have video of the immigrants just literally stepping on the wall as they're coming across. It's just like it's flat pieces of metal, and they're just using it as a bridge or just whatever to make it easier to walk on over to the country. Absolutely outrageous that he would want us all to think that this is true, that he needs another law. Well, Donald Trump secured the border with the laws we have on the books right now. And you know, and I know, President Biden could do the same thing if he wished. And of course, we have President Joe Biden, unfortunately, has turned his back on Israel. It may not be a complete 180, but it's bad enough. We have a president now that is, as I said the other day, he wants a two-state solution, but the two states he's looking for is Michigan and maybe Minnesota or even Nevada, for that matter, because he is very concerned that 13% of the population, the voting population of the state of Michigan, would take off work on voting day, take their time to go to the ballot box and vote undecided or uncommitted, whatever it was. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people, and it has a chilling effect on him because he knows if he doesn't carry Michigan, in all likelihood, he's going to lose the upcoming election. So stay tuned for that. They're also talking a lot about TikTok in the news. And obviously they're trying to push TikTok to be sold because TikTok is an arm of the Chinese government. They have a law in China that says any and all companies that are working in China must turn over any and all information we want, period. End of discussion. And obviously, that raises a lot of security concerns here in America because you have a communist government, an enemy, frankly, of the United States, a country that we likely are going to go to war with at some point in the very near future over Taiwan. And you have them where they have all this information on us. It cannot be a good thing to allow a communist government, an enemy, to be able to have propaganda in our society, to have information on the people that live here. It just defies credulity, just common sense. I mean, this is common sense, folks. It needs to be sold off or it needs to be shut down. And I am not a big government person by any stretch of imagination. However, when it comes to national security, that is the government's role. It is their job to keep us safe from foreign adversaries. That is one of the main jobs of the federal government. And that is something that I, for one, hope they continue to go down as far as pushing this to some type of conclusion one way or the other. And also remember, as I stated in a video that I made, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks, I guess now, concerning TikTok, this is what really, really irritates me too. Not only do they operate here in our country, but we cannot do the same in their country. If you have any type of apps or anything like this, they simply are not allowed in China. The children of China have another app similar to TikTok that the government allows them access to, but they're limited to a very short time per day. It's kind of an award. You do good work, you study hard in school, whatever, we allow you a certain amount of time on this particular app that the communist government controls and monitors daily. But as far as our society and our children, hey, we'll just feed this garbage to them, this propaganda to them, and we'll just continue to collect information on people every single day. Just seems kind of nutty. Seems kind of I don't know, nonsensical. Maybe that's the word that we're looking at. So, okay, we're gonna start drilling into it because the first story I have today is really a good start. Because we talked about this yesterday, and there's a follow up on this judge. Zach, thanks for being here with us. He didn't need a new law to close the border. He needs permission. Yeah. What he needs to wake up. He needs to stop lying to all of us, and he needs to do his job. The number one job, in my estimation, that any president has is to keep all of us safe. It's really just that simple. All right, let's get into the first thing here today. Remember yesterday, let me pull this up on the screen here. Remember yesterday, we had a discussion about this guy right here. It is near and dear to my heart. I think this is the one. Okay. Remember this judge yesterday? This guy is a real clown. He's a real piece of work, right? Remember this guy right here, Judge. What was this guy's name? I wrote it down here. Judge. Well, whatever his name is. It's this is a sitting. I'll pull it up here in a second. This is a sitting judge on the Circuit Court of Appeals, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Unprecedented. We've talked about this yesterday. I don't use that word a lot because it's overused, but this is truly unprecedented. You have a sitting judge going on national television via CNN, and he's attacking Donald Trump. And I mentioned yesterday how outrageous this was, how unbelievable this was. Well, guess what? It has come back to bite this judge. You know where? Let me find his name real quick because, his name is Judge Reggie Walton. Kind of like Reggie Jackson's the way I normally remember his name, but Reggie Walton. And I'll play you this quick clip here. Hopefully this works and we can listen to it. Then we'll read through this article. But the bottom line is one of Donald Trump's friends has now filed a complaint, as they should, against this judge because this violates what these judges are supposed to follow. They have rules of conduct. They are called canons. They are called ethics. This is so clearly a violation of these ethical standards. These individuals are not supposed to even have the appearance of any kind of impropriety. And obviously this judge crossed the line. So let's take a listen and see what this says here.
Making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family. I mean, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law and we believe in the rule of law. And the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm.
Isn't that amazing? Absolutely amazing. Now, that's just a snippet of what we watched yesterday, but let's go ahead and dive into this and see what happened. Trump ally slaps complaint against federal judge who trashed ex-pres on CNN. Very dangerous territory. And of course, this is from the New York Post, and this is a story dated today. All right, a key ally of Donald Trump filed a complaint Tuesday against a district judge out of Washington, D.C., who appeared on CNN last week and took jabs at the former president. U.S. District Judge Reggie Walton went on cable news network to discuss Trump's attacks on the judge overseeing his hush money case out of Manhattan and was openly critical of the 45th president. Mike Davis, the founder of the Article 3 Project, an advocacy group that pushes for the nominations of conservative judges, ripped Walton's CNN appearance as judicial misconduct. And folks, I could not agree more, to be honest with you. We are seeing a dangerous pattern in which D.C. federal judges like Reggie Walton have convinced themselves they have a duty unbounded by the judicial canons. We just talked about that, the canons, the ethics, to make extrajudicial pronouncements about President Trump. Davis wrote in a 13-page complaint. Folks, I want to tell you, I'll look this complaint up and maybe we'll get to it tomorrow. This is literally a breaking story. It just come across one of my Google alerts and I'm like, oh, wow, this is nice, because I was browsing through the New York Post, which I normally do regularly, and boom, this pulled up, and you can imagine I was extremely happy because we just talked about this. So here's a picture of this particular judge, very distinguished looking, right? Boy, did he make a mistake, and I'm sure he knows it. He told the Post that his goal is for Walton to get reprimanded and to send a very clear message to other judges, especially in D.C., that they cannot take off their political robes and climb into the political arena. In his complaint, Davis highlighted a portion of the Code of Conduct for U.S. judges, stipulating that judges have an obligation not to denigrate public confidence in the judiciary's integrity. And I would just say amen after that. It is much worse when a different judge, especially a sitting federal judge, thinks it is his job to moonlight as a CNN commentator on a pending criminal case in another judge's court, he added. During his appearance on CNN last Thursday, Walton opined on Trump's Truth Social screed against Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Juan Merchant. This is the other judge that's hearing the case out of the New York City brought by Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor over there, whose daughter, Lauren Merchant, we're going to talk about her again today, helms the Authentic Campaigns. We're going to talk about this particular organization. I have their website that I think you'll find interesting. This particular this company called Authentic Campaigns is a Chicago-based progressive political consultant firm. And then this obviously is a ex-post by Kathleen Collins. This is the reporter, I believe. It says, Senior Judge Reggie Walton. We do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law, and we believe in the rule of law. And the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm. Remember, he was griping yesterday pertaining to worried about being hurt or their harm coming to the judges. And all of this, folks, supposedly blew up because Donald Trump was basically making comments, not threats or anything violent, but making comments that, in my opinion, are very germane and very proper. This was, at first, the press was like, oh, this has to do with a child of Judge Merchant. Well, that's basically a lie when you put it like that. It is a child of the judge, but it's an adult child who is a Democratic operative who apparently, by published reports, has made over $90 million for Democratic candidate and causes one of her main candidates, which we're going to take a look at here, is none other than Adam Schiff. And you can imagine what President Donald Trump calls him. I'll let your mind imagine that. All right, moving on here. It says, at the time, Trump had made posts alleging that Judge Merchant suffered from acute Trump derangement syndrome and was totally compromised. He also complained about Lauren Merchant peddling questionable claims about her social media activity. Well, it's very concerning to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they are directed at one's family, Walton told CNN. And then, of course, here's President Donald Trump on his Truth Social. He posted, he said, Judge one Merchant, who is suffering from an acute case of Trump derangement syndrome, whose daughter represents crooked Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. Again, we're going to look at this in a second. Adam Schiff, and other radical liberals, has just posted a picture of me behind bars. Now, I want to be clear, this is not a real picture of him behind bars. I believe the allegations are she cut out the face of someone else and put Donald Trump's picture in place of the face of this person. All right. So I want to be clear about that, because yesterday when we were reading it, it looked like she had an actual picture of Donald Trump behind bars, which I was like, there's no way. So anyway, at least now we have a little more light shed on this particular situation. He goes on, has just posted a picture of me behind bars. Her obvious goal, and makes it completely impossible for me to get a fair trial, has now issued another illegal, un-American, unconstitutional order as he continues to try to take away my rights. This judge, by issuing a vicious gag order, is wrongfully attempting to deprive me of my First Amendment right to speak out against the weaponization of law enforcement, including the fact that crooked Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and other hacks and thugs are tracking and following me across the country, obsessively trying to prosecute me or persecute me while everyone knows I've done nothing wrong. And folks, that is true. That's exactly what's going on. And there's nothing wrong. I think I have said many times that these gag orders, in my humble opinion, are completely unconstitutional. It is very scary that our society is clearly headed towards a trend where we're criminalizing all types of speech. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Walton further recalled how both he and his daughter have been threatened in the past and warned about the hurdles that can pose to upholding the law. Davis disputed Walton's suggestion that Trump threatened Merchant, arguing that the former president merely articulated the reason why he believes he will not receive a fair trial. And that's exactly correct, folks. A reasonable person cannot read President Trump's post and draw the conclusion that he made any such threat, Davis argued. President Trump, for example, did not dox the home. Dox is this new thing where you essentially post the home address and other private information of an individual. They call it dox or doxing. Did not dox the home address of the judge and his adult daughter, nor did the president encourage illegal protests outside their homes. That's exactly the way it is. That's exactly the case it is. He even did a Google search right here. He says a Google search was cited in Mike Davis's complaint against Judge Walton, showing the exact sequence of events and basically proving the points he's trying to make that Trump did or did not say and or make. In addition to Walton's CNN appearance, the DC-based judge had previously called Trump a charlatan. This judge not only called Donald Trump a charlatan, but this is one of the judges that has overseen a healthy amount of these so-called J6 cases. I call them hostages. I agree. Majority of these people are hostages. This is a political situation. They have taken something at best is a trespass against most of these individuals. They literally made a federal case out of this and have told you and told me a narrative that is at best incomplete. All right, moving on. And I made these comments. I made the comments I made in the context of sentencing. I've imposed because I'm hoping what I say to the individuals I'm sentencing will resonate. Walton, who has overseen a handful of Capitol riot cases, explained to CNN last Thursday. Davis, a former congressional aide who played a key role in advancing conservative judicial nominees, contended that Walton's public punditry was the wrong way to remedy the situation. I totally agree. If the criminal defendant truly makes violent threats, a prosecutor can charge him with obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and related crimes, he wrote. And folks, he's exactly right about that too. If indeed there is a crime or a threat made against a witness or a judge that is criminal, we already have enough laws on the books to remedy this situation. Make no mistake about it. And he rightly just pointed all this out right now. So I mean, it is what it is. There is no need for these gag orders. They're unconstitutional. Moving on. It says Davis further warned that Wilson's actions could have poisoned a potential jury pool as the selection is set to commence on April 15th for the hush money case, this one out of New York City we've been talking about, in which Trump is facing 34 criminal counts. Judge Walton's clear violation is highly prejudicial to President Trump, and it taints 4 different jury pools, he added, talking about the individual cases against Donald Trump. I totally agree. And this is a picture of Judge Merchant right here. It says Manhattan Superior Court Justice Juan Merchant has been targeted by Trump. Folks, think how unfair this is. You have this man sitting in judgment of Donald Trump, who is clearly the Republican nominee for president, and currently right now, if the vote was taken, would be the leading and would win. He's the leading candidate and would win the presidency of the United States right this second. So very problematic that they cannot get their act together there and simply send this to another judge. When there is even the appearance of anything improper, it calls out, it screams out. It's a must in the interest of justice that they make sure that Donald Trump's rights are definitely afforded to him, each and every one of him. And when you have a daughter who is the head of a very, very liberal organization that is all about electing radical Democrats to office, you know they share the same political beliefs. There's even a picture of him with her at one of these functions. I mean, this is so grossly unfair. It is absolutely ridiculous. Matter of fact, here is the actual complaint, so we don't have to go look for it. It's right here. We will review this at another time because I want to put together a story on this and make sure we analyze this. I think this is a great study, and I really hope he gets in serious trouble over this, because he came out, if you remember from the video yesterday, and he was like, yeah, I'm tired of it. I'm just not taking it. This is wrong. We're worried about our safety. We're this, we're that. And his entire behavior was wrong. There's a reason why it's unprecedented, because he's not supposed to do it. Moving on, it says Davis warned the Post that by appearing on CNN, Walton is creating what could quickly become a very dangerous, slippery slope where you can do this to politically disfavored defendants. He stressed that he would do the same against conservative justices who were going on national television to cast aspersions against a high-profile Democratic criminal defendant. I agree. I would too. I would speak out against that if it was reversed. Folks, I've told you many times, even back when Donald Trump was running in 2016, they had these big gatherings where Donald Trump was giving a campaign speech and they were screaming, lock her up, talking about Hillary Clinton. I have to admit, it's funny. There's no doubt it's funny, but it's not funny. And I said it back then, it's not funny. I don't like the idea of anybody throwing the other political party in jail. It's just not something we should do as a society, for all the reasons I keep talking about all the time in relation to this right here. So, all right, over the weekend, Trump shared a story first reported by the Post detailing how clients of Lauren Merchant, who's the daughter of Judge Merchant, cashed in on criminal cases pending against the former president. So they have another Fani Willis situation here. These individuals are financially benefited. You can't tell me that if your dad is a judge that is overseeing someone like Donald Trump, who you spend your very life working against every single day, that is not going to sway your dad's judgment. And as we're about to talk about here in a second, it is going to sway his judgment. I'm going to show you why. On Monday, Judge Merchant extended a gag order. Here's the reason right here. This is what we're going to talk about. Judge Merchant extended a gag order he previously imposed against Trump, prohibiting from disparaging witnesses, prosecutors, court staff, etc., to also include the judge's family members. So as Donald Trump rightly pointed out, these people can talk about him. These people can say what they want about him. These people can work against him. He is the leading candidate to be elected president in November of this year, but he is now prohibited by the courts from speaking out and defending himself. That is wrong. That is so wrong. Effectively, and this gets into what's going to go before the Supreme Court, I believe, about April 26th when they have opening arguments. The judicial branch should not have any authority over a president, even an ex-president, after he has left office for, I want to make sure you hear this, for actions or things he did while he was president. Just like police have what's called qualified immunity, a president should have absolute immunity for actions he has taken in the normal course and privity of his job, folks. Yes, it is extremely important. And if they disavow what I am telling you, what's going to happen is you're going to have a very weak presidency. You're going to have effectively the deep state, the judiciary branch specifically, would have swallowed up the presidency, because any president that is not liked by the party that comes into power after him can simply have a pair of handcuffs waiting for him when he or she leaves office. And to me, that is extremely, extremely scary and troublesome. Stay tuned. We'll see how this works out. Normal attorneys advise their clients, especially criminal defendants, to avoid public statements, especially criticisms of judges. But Trump correctly understands that this is lawfare and election interference by these Democratic judge and prosecutors, Davis told the Post. Again, I totally 100% absolutely agree. What do you guys think? You agree with me on this here? Do you see it the way I see it? If not, if so, put it in the comments and let me know. Let me take a look and see what we got right here. Yeah, okay. Zach, you're right about the border. Yeah, committed to the rule of law. And my friend Sapphire, he is so clueless about the border. He thought because of Trump's border wall that they could no longer migrate. So Biden had 150 return. Yeah, it's a mess that's going on down there. And agreed. Thanks, Sapphire. I appreciate that. All right. So, folks, the news of the day, or I should say, because this has been a very, very busy news day, to put it bluntly, is the following. Let's go ahead and dive into this, and then we're going to look at a video here in a second. You may or may not have heard good news for President Donald Trump. I'm going to blow this up a little bit bigger so we can all see it a little bit. President Donald Trump did post in cash his $175 million civil fraud case, halting collection of the massive judgment. I have a lot to talk about this right now, and I have a lot to say definitely in the future about this. I've had individuals ask me essentially, hey, why did he go ahead and post bond? Apparently some bonding company actually approached Donald Trump's folks and said, hey, I'll put the bond up for you. I'm willing to help you out with that. Well, it was pretty well an easy decision, according to the bondsman, because Donald Trump literally gave him $175 million in cash to secure the bond. Because the courts generally, depending on the state, they don't want a check, for example, from Donald Trump for $175 billion. They want a bond. And in this particular case, a bond is what you're just thinking of. Just like if you go to jail, your bail or your bond, they're obviously related. Your bail is a portion of the bond that a bondsman puts up. And in this case, it's civil, but it's really the same thing. And instead of putting up a part of it, Donald Trump put up the whole thing. And of course, the bondsman will still make a nice commission off it. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to be 10%, but it's going to be something that I'm sure he's going to be rewarded for very, very richly. At any rate, if Donald Trump wins on appeal, which we hope he will, he'll get all his money back. At least he should. Now, he will lose the money that he had to pay for the bond. That's just the way it normally goes, and that's just the way. That's par for the course. Is basically what that boils down to. So let's take a quick look at this and see if this little video pops up here, and we'll get a little bit of information on this here. So let's take a quick listen on this.
Mr. President! With just 4 days to pay the at least $464 million bond, former President Donald Trump's panic mode does not appear to be easing up. Posting to Truth Social today that the amount ordered by the judge was too high for bonding companies, adding that, quote, putting up money before an appeal is very expensive. With New York Attorney General Letitia James already taking the first steps to seize Trump's assets if he's unable to post bond, Trump has been publicly defiant.
We're fighting it out with them. We have a lot of cash and we have a great company, but they want to take it away, or at least take the cash element away. Billions of dollars in value, billions of dollars in properties, but they'd like to take the cash away so I can't use it on the campaign.
As Trump seeks solutions, his campaign also facing a cash crunch, struggling to chip away at President Joe Biden's significant financial edge. Trump's campaign and joint fundraising committee raised a combined $20.3 million in February, ending the month with $41.9 million in the bank. While an increase from January, the numbers lag behind Biden's, whose political operation raised $53 million last month and ended February with $155 million cash on hand. Meanwhile, with Trump's legal fees still looming over him, his leadership PAC spending more on legal expenses than it took in last month. Biden not only outpacing Trump at the bank, but also on the campaign trail, making an appeal to key voting blocs.
I need you. I need you badly. I need the help. Kamala and I desperately need your help.
While former President Trump has largely stayed behind closed doors since clinching the Republican nomination, swapping rallies for donor meetings and the golf course. Trump has only visited one battleground state since Super Tuesday.
Hello, Georgia. I'm thrilled to be back.
And held a campaign event for his hand-picked Senate candidate in Ohio before the primary in that state. In the same stretch of time, Biden has visited every top battleground state but one.
You're going to be building the future here in Arizona, and Arizona is building the future.
It's always amazing, folks, how they spin anything and everything pertaining to President Donald Trump. It's, you name it, they spin it any way they possibly can to make Donald Trump look bad. First of all, as far as the amount of money he's made in his political campaign, so what? The person that has the most money has an advantage because they have more money on hand to spend on ads and things like this. But the season is still relatively young, and Donald Trump can make up any type of shortage easily. Not only that, he's a very wealthy man. If he wants to, he could fund his own campaign. He could put his own money in there if he so chose to do so. They also left out that Donald Trump made a measly, $5 billion plus the other day. Now, today he was down a little bit as far as on paper goes because the stock value went down 10, 20%, whatever. But that's normal with an IPO. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. I can assure you the press, if the stock goes up 50% again tomorrow, they're not going to be talking about how rich Donald Trump is and what a genius he is. They're just simply going to ignore it. But the bottom line is Donald Trump has a lot of money and he has a lot of wealthy friends, and they are just now getting out of the gate. As far as the campaign trail and allegedly Joe Biden doing more as far as hitting the campaign than Donald Trump. Well, there may be a reason for that. Donald Trump is tied up in court in this lawfare. As we have discussed, in a civil context of a case, you don't have to show up in court, but you are compelled to be there for any type of criminal matter, such as the 4 different cases, 90-some felonious charges President Donald Trump is facing. So he has to be there for his criminal cases because Joe Biden and his cronies are engaged in this lawfare against him. Additionally, Donald Trump is actively on the campaign trail today, as we talked about earlier, and I believe he has a major speech planned for sometime this evening. I'll have to double check on that fact, but at any rate, I can promise you he's going to stay very active. One thing about Donald Trump, I don't think anybody can honestly accuse him of is laziness or not getting up and making things happen. He's a very hardworking man, no matter what your politics are. That's just the way it is. Zach, can't Trump be suing for malicious prosecution? You know, the short answer is probably not, at least not right now. It is always something that you could consider at a later date, but I don't see that really happening. It is possible, but when you're a public figure like this, and it's, again, it gets real complicated when it talks about malicious persecutions. And the more I'm thinking about it, I'm not even sure that there is a federal statute for malicious prosecution. And remember, these cases are all federal except for, well, the Alvin Bragg case is technically a city case, and he's prosecuting it trying to enforce federal election law in a city case. And then, of course, the one in Georgia is similar. It's a state RICO case. But I can tell you from just experience that I've had, just cases I've seen myself, it's very difficult to prevail on some type of malicious prosecution cases. I would also encourage you to think about this. I wouldn't feel too sorry for President Donald Trump. He has a knack for getting himself into a problem, and then he comes out smelling like a rose. So I think that is something that we can all bank on. He's a fighter. He's tough. He's wealthy. And he's really the right man at the right time. You know that I am a religious man myself, and I firmly believe our best days are ahead of us. And I believe it's not only just up to Donald Trump. I believe it's up to all of us to wake up, rise up, vote the correct people into office, make ourselves educated and aware of exactly the reality of the life that we live in. Because I'm telling you, what's going on with Donald Trump right now, Zach, is not new. It's new only in the sense that we are all seeing it literally in black and white. It's in daylight. These type of things normally happen quietly. It's normally a person that doesn't have a lot of money, or at least enough money to fight back against the state or the feds, because let's face it, the state and or the feds, especially the feds, have unlimited resources. And if you cross someone in the deep state, as we have talked about many times on these programs here, you're in serious trouble. I really don't care how wealthy you are. Again, Donald Trump is an exception because he is so extremely wealthy, and he is a very powerful man, even as the former president of the United States. I think this is going to all work out very well for him. I think it's just a matter of time, us all educating one another and encouraging each other to get out, vote, do whatever it is that we need to be successful. But thanks for that question. Your question is a good question. Very, very good question. All right. Now we're going to switch over, and I found this video yesterday of some, now this guy is kind of controversial. I'm going to tell you on the front end, and you're going to see his picture pop up, but don't have a heart attack here. It's my buddy Alan Dershowitz. And I know that some of y'all don't like him, and I get it. He's not always my favorite person either, but I have to tell you, I do like this guy. He is a devout Democrat, but he calls it like he sees it. He reminds me of myself in a lot of ways, in the sense that I don't care if it's a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. I will tell you to the best of my ability, to the best of my beliefs, exactly the way I see whatever. And that's the way he is. And he is going to slam the Democrats in this video right here. And he's going to explain to us why these gag orders are so unconstitutional in his opinion. He's going to talk about why Fani Willis should be disqualified. I think it is definitely worth our time to dissect and to go through. So, as I always say, free your mind if he's causing you pain to even think about him, and understand we're trying to learn, we're trying to educate ourselves, we're trying to find truth, we're trying to make sure that all of us see the reality in this matrix, if you will, that's right in front of us. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this. I promise it won't be too painful, and let's discuss it. Don't forget to put your questions in the comment down here, and we will get to them. So here we go.
Welcome back to the Dersh Show. Before we get to Trump's legal issues, and we'll talk about several of them today, I want to comment on the passing of my friend Joe Lieberman. Joe and I were the only man in American history who was offered the possibility of running a primary to...
I'm going to forward through the memorial for Joe Lieberman. I want to get to the good stuff right now.
Now Governor Lamont, who ran against him for the decent guy who the fundraiser was a debate.
They were good friends, Joe Lieberman and him. So he talks about him for a minute.
Great. And so I miss him. I vote Democrat. That used to be the case. No longer the case. My vote is...
Okay, here he is right about
here. You're Jewish and pro-Israel, you're going to vote Democrat. That used to be the case. No longer the case. My vote is up for grabs. You have to earn my vote. I'm not decided who I'm going to vote for at this point. As I say in the article, and Joe agreed.
Folks, I'm going to tell you, for him to say that, that's the first time I've ever heard him say that his vote is up for grabs. I've never heard Alan Dershowitz say that. He always says, I am going to vote Democratic. I am firmly Democratic. and then he goes ahead and says what he thinks is fair, right, just, or whatever. But I've never heard him say his vote is up for grab. He has always said just the opposite.
With this, Jewish supporters of Israel, unlike Muslims and Arabs in Michigan, we have somewhere to go. The Muslims and Arabs have nowhere to go. They're not going to vote for Trump. They're not going to vote for Bobby Kennedy, who's the most pro-Israel candidate out there. On the other hand, Jews like me and Joe, when he was alive, we had some place to go. We could have voted for Bobby Kennedy. He's a friend of mine. We could vote for no labels, and many Jews could vote for Donald Trump. So don't take us for granted. Don't assume that just because our parents and grandparents voted Democrat that we're going to vote Democrat. For many Jews, that's probably the case, but not for me. And it wasn't the case for Joe Lieberman. He was, of course, active in the No Labels movement. Turning to Israel, just one point about that. So Israel conducted an amazing raid and activity on the Shifa Hospital, the largest hospital in North Gaza. Israel had captured that hospital in the first days of the war and had cleared it out of Hamas fighters. But then the Hamas fighters came back, and Israel went back in a targeted surgical raid. Absolutely what the United States wants it to do. It put all the patients aside. It put the doctors in separate areas. It went in then and it killed 200 terrorists, 200 Hamas terrorists.
He's very passionate,
and then it
understandably
captured
so,
maybe another 300 or 400 suspects, some of whom
because
will
he
turn out
is
to be Hamas
Jewish
terrorists, others
and he
Hamas
cares
sympathizers,
deeply
some
for
others
Israel,
perhaps
like I do.
not involved, and they'll be freed. But it was exactly what the United States wanted it to do, and they did it perfectly. And at least according to Israeli military sources, there were no casualties among patients or doctors. Obviously, that remains to be fully determined. But CNN condemned it. The New York Times condemned it. The Western world condemned it. Israel can do nothing right. If Israel does it, by definition, if it's wrong, if Hamas does it, for many people at least, it's right.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
So
he's exactly right.
that's my view on the latest Israeli news. Oh, one more point. Today, Israel apparently, although it doesn't admit it, attacked a military building, but it had been turned into a military. There's no protection specifically for embassies or consulates that are a whole book called Get Trump,
Okay, here he goes.
which deals obviously
he
with
has,
what's going on in New York.
He's the one that coined that phrase, get Trump. This is a good book. I have listened to part of it. In full disclosure, I haven't listened to everything. I got a lot of books. Sometimes I juggle between, but I'm sure it's going to be a great read. He had this book out way before all this stuff started hitting the fan, so to speak, pertaining to Donald Trump. So I just like that's very interesting. He's been spot on all his predictions for this.
New York, what's going on in Washington, D.C., in Florida, in Georgia, and I'm going to talk about New York and then talk about Georgia. So just hours ago, breaking news, the district attorney of Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, who has brought the weakest criminal case, perhaps in the history of American criminal cases. I mean, I've never seen anything so weak. It may win. It's still extraordinarily weak. It may win because the judge is an elected judge whose daughter works for the a political group that opposes Trump. You're not supposed to talk about his daughter. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yes, you are. So let's turn to that. So there's a gag order in effect now, which is probably unconstitutional. I think all gag orders are presumptively unconstitutional. They're prior restraint. They say you can't talk about.
These gag orders say what he calls prior restraint. In other words, you're essentially paying a penalty before you've been convicted.
Something. That's what the First Amendment prohibits, prior restraint. That's the Pentagon Papers case that I was involved in 50 years ago. The Supreme Court established that you can't have prior restraint. If they did something wrong, you can punish them afterward, but you can't prevent them from speaking. And that's what prior restraint is, and that's what a gag order is. And the gag order didn't cover the judge, and it didn't cover the judge's daughter. And there was some evidence that the judge's daughter worked for a firm, a political company that lives and dies by supporting Democrats, and his daughter would benefit enormously if Trump were to be convicted, and if the conviction were to result in his not being elected. And now the Democrats are all saying, oh my God, you can't talk about somebody's daughter. You can't talk about somebody's daughter. Have you ever heard of Clarence Thomas? Democrats are trying desperately to get Clarence Thomas recused from any case involving Trump or the election, not because of his activities, but because of his wife's activities.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? That's just the way these Democrats are. They will sit and complain and scream from the hilltops that Donald Trump is doing something terrible with a child of this particular judge, and it's outrageous and it must stop. But yet the Democrats engage in this behavior all the time. How many times have you heard them demand that Clarence Thomas, one of the sitting justices on the U.S. Supreme Court, that because of his wife is very politically active and she's obviously conservative, and because of this, they are always demanding that he recuses himself. It's just amazing how they always want it two different ways.
Either you can or you can't talk about daughters and wives, but you can't say you can't talk about Democrats.
If you're wondering why I am changing the screen up, it's not because I want you to see my face more than Dershowitz here. I don't want to get stopped on the live stream. Some of these individuals are very protective of their videos or whatnot. Generally, something like this is not a problem, and I'm not doing anything wrong either way because we're educating one another. We're discussing it. It's a commentary. It's what they call fair use. However, I don't want the stream to go blank, so I'm just changing it up, just so you know.
Daughters, but you can talk about Republican wives. My view is you can talk about both. You can talk about both. Judges should recuse themselves if their wives have a major stake in the outcome of an election or a case or anything like that. Same thing is true with daughters. We know that judges have to file forms, financial forms, and they include whether or not a daughter will benefit financially from the outcome of a case. Look, let's talk common sense. People do things for their children. People do things for their wives, but even more important,
Exactly
they
right.
do things for their children. I know I've done things for my children. I've made sacrifices for my children. If I were a judge and I knew my child would benefit enormously from a decision, no matter how hard I tried unconsciously, there would be a thumb, maybe an entire elbow on the scale of justice if I knew it affected my son. I made that argument when Scalia sat on the 2000 Bush versus Gore case because everybody knew that Scalia's son would be appointed to a high position in the administration.
Isn't that true? We touched on it earlier. If you were the judge, this merchant or whatnot, and you have your daughter that has these leanings, she's Democratic, her business is a Democratic operation, whatever, subconsciously, some way, we all would do this. I know, listen, y'all know I have 7 natural children and I have 2 children that are essentially foster kids that I raised as my own. I would do anything for these kids. If they needed my help, I would be there. And if I'm a judge in the position of some of these judges here, it's no matter what I tell myself, and I'm sure you're the same way, wouldn't it be difficult? Wouldn't it be almost impossible not to put something on that scale like Alan Dershowitz is talking about here in the positive for your child? I just think it's just human nature. And to deny that is really stretching credulity.
If Bush won the election. And I thought that was enough to recuse Scalia. And I think it's enough to recuse the judge in the Trump New York case if, in fact, his daughter would benefit from a conviction of Donald Trump. Now, there's another story, and it may not be true, and one has to look at it very carefully. There was a picture posted on a website that was characterized as the daughter's website, but maybe it wasn't, showing Trump behind bars.
We talked about this earlier.
If that were in fact the case, that would be an additional ground for recusal. There's been a denial saying that she gave up that website some time ago and somebody else posted it. Well, you have a hearing and you find out whether there's any truth to that or not. But the idea that you can't comment on somebody's daughter is absurd. If there's a case involving millions of dollars. And if one side wins, the daughter gets hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I want to make sure you heard that. I'm speeding it up just a little bit for time reasons, but he's exactly right. There is nothing wrong with commenting about someone's daughter, especially an adult daughter who is a Democratic operative. We're going to take a look at that website here in just a minute. So
Obviously, that's something that a judge should be recused over. And we know that because the rules provide for that. The rules require that when there is a financial benefit to any close member of a family, both the appearance of bias and the reality of bias operate. And so there are so many reasons why there should be no prior restraint, no gag order prohibiting Donald Trump from commenting on the daughter of a judge who is an adult and who's involved in politics on behalf of Trump's opponents. It seems so logical. And yet you go on CNN and all the comment, oh, what a horrible thing, talking about a judge's daughter. These are the same people who are saying, oh, what a horrible thing, not talking about a justice's wife. You know, the double standard, the hypocrisy, the shoe on the other foot test. It's so apparent that it's laughable. CNN just specializes in conflict of interest. And speaking of conflict, who's going to decide the issue of whether or not the gag order should apply to the judge's daughter? The judge is going to decide that. Isn't that a conflict of interest? The judge being asked to protect his daughter from attack.
And of course, he has already decided, the judge, all by his lonesome, he's decided that I'm going to go ahead and include my daughter into this. Donald Trump, if you say anything about my daughter, I'm going to throw you in prison. That's a whole other problem.
I'm a judge. I'll do anything to protect my daughter from attacks. So,
of course,
no, there's, again, just too much hypocrisy to contemplate here. And I would hope that maybe appellate courts can see through this hypocrisy. I hope and expect that if the gag order does extend beyond where it is today, Trump will appeal it. And he has a right to appeal it. This is the final order involving what he can say and what he can't say. It's not involving directly the case itself. So
it's interesting that he thinks Donald Trump should go ahead and appeal this particular gag order, especially if it's expanded, and it has been expanded. And I agree with the professor here. I think it should be appealed. I think it's a perfect thing to appeal. And not only that, if he appeals it, it should tie this particular case up longer so that they can't continue to rush. Remember, they're rushing this case to judgment because they're trying to beat Donald Trump to election day. They're trying to tag him with some type of felonious case, some type of felonious conviction, in the hopes that this will cause him to lose votes.
So stay tuned. We'll see. Now we turn back to our favorite long-term subject, Phony Willis.
Yeah,
so on Friday, the Trump defendants, he and I think 9 others, officially appealed the judge's ruling in the case. The judge knew there was going to be appeal, and the appeal is a very, very strong one because the judge made findings of fact that should automatically result in the recusal of Phony Willis. The judge found that there were reasons to doubt her credibility. The judge suspected that she was being mendacious. The judge had a basis for concluding that the speech she made in front of a Black church was improper and unethical. So the record is just filled with facts from which a reasonable appellate court should conclude, my God, no, she can't continue to be involved in this case. What hangs over her is the heavy suspicion that she may be the person who should be on trial. My personal belief, she committed perjury. My personal belief, she committed conspiracy to commit perjury with her lover. My personal belief, if I were a judge, based on the evidence, I would have found that she did not pay back the money and the benefit she received from the thousands and thousands of dollars of trips. What I would have found is any prosecutor who knows that you have an obligation not to receive a nickel from anybody in your employ, if that lawyer had in fact paid back the money, she would have kept a record of it. Lawyers do that. I have my little notebook. I record everything in my notebook. I'm sure she has ledgers and notebooks and diaries, not a single notation, not a photograph of the money being paid, not a withdrawal slip, not a deposit slip. Who are you going to?
That does stretch credulity when you think about it. How can you believe that an attorney, and just like he is saying here, as a lawyer, he keeps records on everything. They have books on top of books. They keep track of every transaction. Any lawyer knows if you're reimbursed or you're paying a bill or you're receiving money, you keep a receipt on it, you keep a record on it. And to state otherwise, it's just defies. It's just amazing she would even say that and hopes people believed it, but apparently it worked for her, at least at this particular juncture.
You're gonna believe me or your lying eyes.
That's
Let me
exactly
tell
right.
you, I don't believe anything she said on that witness stand, and neither did the judge in the case. Now, so the appellate courts are stuck with a conclusion that she almost certainly lied, that she almost certainly committed a felony, but there wasn't enough to show that there was an actual conflict of interest and actual bias. There is enough. That's enough. There's enough. When in doubt, recuse in a situation like this involving the man running for president of the United States. No, he's not above the law, but the public has to have trust and faith in the outcome of the case. Will anybody in Georgia or anywhere else have any trust in the discretionary decisions made by the prosecutor in this case? Right now, she is full-time CYA covering her own backside. She is in trouble. If there were a reasonable prosecutor with authority in the case, they would, of course, open up a criminal investigation of her and of Nathan Wade because the evidence is overwhelming, but certainly enough for probable cause to conduct a grand jury. And with that state of the record, I would really think that an appellate court should. I'm not saying it will. Courage is not an attribute that judges have often. This judge had a little bit of courage. He did make some findings that were very damaging to the elected district attorney, but he didn't have the courage to go all the way. Maybe he wanted the appellate courts to do it for him.
I've talked about that too, and I think I should briefly talk about it more directly and clearly. It does seem to me, after looking at this decision, the judge might have been a little smarter than I give him credit for in this split the baby decision, this King Solomon type of division, because the way he wrote the papers, even though he didn't kick both of them off the way he should have, he didn't have the courage, as the professor just said, to go ahead and just kick them all off like he should have. However, if you read his paperwork and the way he worded it, he talks about how she has done things that were wrong. She has made lapses in judgment. And frankly, he didn't believe her. And he pretty well said that. This odor of mendacity, that's basically saying she lied. There's something that stinks about this particular case. What I want to get across is I believe that the judge, Scott McAfee, intentionally wrote it this way and ruled this way to take the heat off himself. Yet he knows that the Court of Appeals is highly likely to take this case, make a ruling, kick her off this case, and then that way his hands are clean, if you know what I mean. What do you think? You agree with me on that? That's just kind of the way I'm leaning on this here. And Zach, why aren't more law professors or legal scholars speaking out? That's always a good question, Zach. And the fact is there are more people that are speaking out, more professors, scholars, whatever. But you have to remember a few things. Unfortunately, when it comes to the educated people, we're talking professors, we're talking teachers. My children, for example, two of them are teachers in the school district. And my two sisters are also teachers, or at least they're administrators in the school districts. The schools tend overwhelmingly to attract more liberal type individuals. It's just the way it is. It's kind of like the trucking profession attracts more conservative males. It's just the way it is. It doesn't mean there's not anybody that has a more liberal type of persuasion as far as their politics are concerned. I'm just telling you what happens. So first of all, there's not a whole lot of conservative-minded individuals that are professors or that are teachers. It's just the way it is. It's the nature of the beast. And your question is spot on, because you would think more people would come out and speak out against it, but unfortunately, that's just not the case. And there's one final aspect to talk about in relation to your question, Zach, and that is, if you speak out, you may have the whole weight of the world come down on you, because when you get out of line, that's where the deep state comes in. They will open a whole can of you know what against you. You could end up losing your business, losing your job. Think of it this way, Zach. If you have a wife, you have children, you're just a working stiff, like us all, and we show up for work, we give it all we got for the 8 to 10 hours there or whatever, come home. Are you going to take a chance of speaking out the way I'm speaking out and lose your job or make somebody mad? How about if you have your own business, you're your own entrepreneur of some sort, and you speak out publicly, and then the regulators that regulate your business, they may have a problem with that. Look what Letitia James has done to Donald Trump in New York State. So it can be a big problem, and you just generally want to stay focused on what's going on in your life. If you have a family, you want to stay focused on your family. If you have a business, you got to be careful not to lose your business. I don't know if I've ever shared this, but a long time ago, it's been about 20 years now, I actually had a city council member come to me that was in the city I was living in at the time. And the council member asked me, say, hey, you mind if I put up a campaign sign in your yard? It was a pretty big campaign sign because my property was a good sized property. I had a very long driveway, but I had quite a bit of frontage on this major road in this particular city. And again, it was like a city councilman type position. I didn't even really know the guy that well, but I mean, we were associates. And what am I going to say? No. And then I need something. People have memories. I mean, let's just be honest about it. And to think it would have no effect if I said no, I just don't think that is a credible thing to think about. So at any rate, I went ahead and said, sure. He put the sign up. He lost. He was defeated in the election. And I was thinking, oh no, I'm in trouble, especially if I need something from like a land use type of perspective or whatever. But I was in a catch-22 in that type of situation. So to answer your question, these are all the things that you have to think about. It depends on your particular situation, and you have to make those decisions accordingly. And Zach, surely there are retirement age professors who aren't worried about their jobs. Maybe, I don't know. That fits the bill for Dershowitz here. But again, remember, at least from my experience, there's just not a lot of the professor types that are what you would call conservative. At least in my experience, I don't see a lot of it. If y'all know someone else that should speak out or that's conservative, that's similar to Mr. Dershowitz here, put in the comments. Let me know. I'd be interested to know. I don't know everything, no matter what I may come across as. It's just been my experience. It's been my experience has been what I have seen out there in the real life, so to speak. Sapphire, I think he did it this way because in the state of Georgia, there is no case law record to support the judge to just bounce them both. So by kicking it to the appellate court, yeah, it's very possible. You could be right. And that's the reason I think that the case is definitely going to be taken up by the Court of Appeals. I think the judge's writings beg essentially for the Court of Appeals to take it. And the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, and I'm talking state Supreme Court, even the U.S. Supreme Court, this is the type of case they look at to actually take up because they want to settle questions that are confusing. They want the law to be clear so that everybody can understand and follow the law. And in the state of Georgia, if you remember, there was case law to support both sides of the judge's final outcome here. On one hand, they had case law that said, hey, you can remove her and her entire office for simply having an appearance of some type of malfeasance. And then there was case law that supported the other side of the equation, which was you actually have to have a conflict, that the defendants have to prove an actual conflict in order to remove the DA. In my opinion, that alone means the Court of Appeals should step in and look into this. Will they do that? I'm predicting yes, but obviously you never know. This is a very odd and rare case, but we will see.
Because he made enough of a record for the appellate courts if they were wise to say, no. This case can't proceed with Phony Willis in charge of the prosecution. It just creates far too much of an appearance and a reality of conflict of interest. So we'll wait and see if the appellate courts do the right thing. All right, let me look at some letters.
Okay, that was pretty well lit as far as his commentary. I think that pretty well puts it in spot on as far as the point that I wanted to get across. He talked briefly about the gag orders and the problems with the gag orders, punishing you before there's even a verdict. He believed they're unconstitutional. I believe they're unconstitutional. And, until one of these cases goes up on appeal, that's just kind of where it's going to stay. I want to talk about Merchant's daughter here for a second. So let me switch back to my screen. Take a look at this here. It's important that we all are on the same page and understand this. Take a look at this. All right, so you got this judge that has a daughter. Let's just see what a quick Google search revealed. Again, we talked about this, but we need to just do a little more clarifying. The judge's daughter, Lauren Merchant, is president of Authentic Campaigns, a Chicago-based progressive political consulting firm whose top clients include California Representative Adam Schiff. Again, we know what his real name is, who was the lead prosecutor in Trump's first impeachment trial, and the Senate Majority PAC, a major party fundraiser. Now, please recall that when we talk about Adam Schiff, we're not talking about some minor type of player. This guy has literally been a thorn in Donald Trump's side from day one, or at least has tried to be a thorn. This is the guy that literally was in charge of carrying the impeachment paperwork pertaining to Donald Trump over to the Senate, and he was prosecuting this case against Donald Trump. Now, this guy is a proven liar. He has lied so many times on the news pertaining to Donald Trump. It is just sickening. Remember, he said some time ago that he has evidence, clear evidence, that Russiagate stuff was real, and it turned out to be nothing but a complete lie. I mean, he just lied, and he knew he lied when he was lying. This guy is one sick, pathetic, evil individual. But that's just my opinion. So let's take a look at the actual company that she runs. And remember, the press was trying to tell us, oh, this is a child of Judge Merchant. She's really somebody you should take your hands off because this is his daughter. She's just an innocent victim. And Donald Trump is just so mean and abusing her so terribly. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the website here. All right. Now, I will tell you the part concerning, they had a section on here that they have apparently taken down because they knew people like me would be snooping. But on this Authentic, this is the name of the company, right? The name of this political action committee, or this, essentially what she is, she's a deep Democratic operative. I believe the other page said she has gross, 90 to 93? Yeah, $90 million is what she has been able to raise with this organization. And let's take a look and see who her clients are. You ready? Let's take a look at this. Remember, this is the judge that's judging our president. It's his daughter, who he is obviously close with and clearly shares political beliefs. Let's take a look at who they represent, okay? Congressman Pat Ryan, Congressman Lori Underwood. Oh, Governor Gretchen Whitmire. Boy, she's, I think she's out of, Wisconsin or Minnesota? I think it's Wisconsin. She is obviously a radical. And then you have Governor Katie Hobbs. That's out of Arizona. Governor Tina Katuk. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right. Oh, look at that. President Joe Biden. She's worked with President Joe Biden. Senate Majority PAC. She's worked Senator John Hickenlooper. Asian Society, the Rabin Group. That's one of the former, I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head, but I believe that is one of the advisors with one of the presidents. I think it was President Clinton. Of course, Taylor Swift. We all know about her politics. And Wisdom, Wisconsin Democrat. So you can see, and this is just who she admits, this organization admits to working with. Let's just bounce and see if there's anything else on here that it's going to show about. It says we're an award-winning agency that campaigns and nonprofits trust to help them change the world. She can also put something on here that my dad will come to my defense. Oh, thanks, Sapphire. It's Whitmire in Michigan. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Michigan. You're exactly right. And see, I think he did it that way. Okay. Yeah. We got that. Okay. Thanks on the Michigan thing. I'm often wrong on that. I knew she's one of them northern type of Democratic type governors. So even by their own admittance on their little website here, we can see what they're all about. careers. Join our team. I was actually trying to find her photo. I thought it might have been her photo on the front page. They had a section. I didn't know right here in the middle. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. That kind of looks like her right there. You can see that they're in front of what appears to be the Supreme Court. The shirt here says stoppable, deniable, documented, unafraid, or for whatever. It says Authentic is an award-winning digital marketing, paid media, and fundraising agency that creates lasting and inclusive change. How about that? Ain't that something? All right. So I think it's worth taking a look at that because clearly, this is just not some innocent child that the media was trying to make us all think was the reality here. Obviously, when you're told something, especially by CNN or one of these other news agencies, you need to check it yourself. Here's what Donald Trump Jr., he posted this. This is in the New York Post, and they were referring to his comments. He says, Trump Jr. posts photo of judge's daughter who allegedly worked on Biden's campaign. All right, Donald Trump Jr. shared a link that broadcasts a photo of New York Judge Juan Merchan's daughter on social media on Tuesday as his father was admonished for his online rants amid the legal maneuvers against him. Okay, you got a smiling. This is Donald Trump Jr., obviously. And then, here's the photo right here. Can y'all see that? Let me blow it up a little bit bigger. Here we go. I was hoping to find something like this. I think that's as big as it's going to go on my screen. It says around 12:30 p.m. Tuesday, Donald Trump Jr. shared a Breitbart article featuring a picture of Merchant with his daughter Lauren and alleging that she worked on the Biden-Harris presidential campaign. And remember, we just looked at the website for the organization she's part of. They say on the website there that Joe Biden's one of their clients. At least that was his picture that was there. You saw it and I saw it. And here is the post by Donald Trump Jr. Let me see if I can read it for us. It says, seems relevant, yet another connection in this hand-picked Democrat show trial. The BS never ends, folks. Daughter of judge on Trump case worked on Biden-Harris campaign. And this is, of course, brought by Breitbart.com. It says the daughter of Judge Juan Merchant, who is overseeing Trump's case, worked on the Biden-Harris campaigner. It's just outrageous that they cannot pick somebody that at least looks like Donald Trump has a fair shake. Here's the judge with his innocent daughter, a grown woman making $90-some million for this agency to elect radical Democrats. It says, seems relevant, yet another connection in this hand-picked Democratic show trial. The BS never ends, folks. Donald Trump Jr. on Twitter. And then here's another picture of her. It says Democrat. It's got her photo right here. Democrat Lauren Merchant, and the company name, we just looked at the website, Authentic Campaigns, president and partner. So she's the president of this organization. Lauren Merchant was listed as a Democrat on a 2020 honors list by Campaigns and Elections, which detailed her work as a president and partner with Authentic Campaigns, a digital agency geared towards progressive political campaigns. All right, so the plot thickens here. And then we have, this is Hakeem Jeffries, I believe, in addition to the Biden-Harris campaign and Kamala Harris for the People, Authentic, this particular agency, lists this is actually Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries as previous claims. So Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries are clients of hers via this organization. And here's President Donald Trump 2 hours after his son posted online. His father appeared before Judge Merchant to plead not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records stemming from hush money payments to 3 individuals, including his 2016 White House campaign. Can you imagine how crazy this has to look to the rest of the world? You have the guy who, in all likelihood, is going to be the next president of the United States. Clearly, they're attempting to take this man out by lawfare to prevent him from being the next president. And they're using the judicial system to do this. just this case alone counts for 34 felony charges. This Alvin Bragg, a city prosecutor, essentially has taken what is normally something they rarely prosecute, number one. Number two, if they do, it's generally, as far as I can always tell, it's a misdemeanor. But you have a city prosecutor essentially weaving this together with election laws, federal, I got to emphasize that, federal election laws to make this some type of felony. And the other thing they were trying to do is get around the statute of limitations, because this is all the way back to 2016 and before. Clearly, if it was something that they would normally handle as the standard misdemeanor, not this novel legal nonsense that they weave together, the statute of limitations would have already ran. And it's just a matter of racing the clock out, folks. That's all it boils down to on this. It says, during the lengthy proceeding, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office accused Trump of threatening our city, our justice system, our courts, and our office with his own online diatribes. Yeah, it was terrible. And there's the Judge Merchant again. But when Judge Merchant reportedly admonished Donald Trump's blustering post, he declined to issue a gag order that would prevent the real estate mogul and his lawyers from talking about the case publicly. This was obviously initially. Yeah, it's just clear that these folks have it out for him. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and a family whose daughter worked for Vice President Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign. So the allegation now is that not only has she worked for all these individuals, she's receiving money from the Biden-Harris campaign. So the judge's daughter that's overseeing 34 felony counts against President Donald Trump, his daughter is being paid by the Biden-Harris campaign. It just seems like a bad movie, don't it? And then here's Alvin Bragg. He also blasted Bragg's investigation into his payments to attorney Michael Cohen as a witch hunt and vowed that his only crime has been to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. Amen to that. And that's pretty well the nuts and bolts of it. Amazing, isn't it? Absolutely incredible what these people are trying to do. And so far, they're getting away with it. Unbelievable. You know, folks, the fact that they continue to whittle away at our First Amendment rights of free speech is very, very troubling to me. This whole thing is extremely troubling. And the fact that just words now are being punished. If he violates this order and he says something about the judge's grown daughter, who's a Democratic operative, after going after Donald Trump, the judge could put Donald Trump in jail. Can you imagine that? I can just imagine what's going to happen if that was to happen. And listen, don't think it can't happen in our country, because it very well can happen. Did you know? Take a look at this. You're not going to believe this when I show it to you, but this is real. I'm not making this up. Take a peek at this. They just passed a law that took effect today in Scotland. It's called the Hate Crime and Public Order of Scotland Act. And I'm not making this up. This is true. You should Google it yourself when you get off this cast and take a look at it. It says the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland bill was introduced in Parliament April of 2020. And essentially what this thing will do, folks, and what it is doing, is it's making it a crime to basically upset somebody with your words. And they're going to go into it as to exactly what it covers. But for example, if you say someone that is in transition, that they're really a man when they're trying to become a woman, you can be prosecuted and arrested. That is what's going on right now. I got a story right here we'll take a look at, and you can see it for yourself. And again, don't think it can't happen here in America. We've been talking briefly about that case, I think it was in Idaho, where one of the girls' basketball teams that's in the March Madness stuff going on right now, apparently they were coming out of a restaurant and some individuals in a pickup truck were driving by and hurling some type of racial insults to them. Well, it's made national news. It's made world news. And now you have the FBI looking into that as what they call a hate crime. Are you serious? Words coming out of someone's mouth, and they're going to use the resources of the FBI to track them down and prosecute them. So don't think it can't happen in this country. Words, just words. And I never quite understood that hate crime stuff. Is there something called a love crime? So if you rob somebody, there's a love crime and a hate crime. I mean, tell me what you think. Is it getting weird, or is it am I missing something here? This is just nonsense. It's nonsensical. I don't know. It's scary. It's scary, all of these. Folks, a lot of times we mean well when we pass these laws because we don't want people to be scared. We don't want people to be harassed. I get all that. But folks, you cannot legislate morality from the government. You don't want that. I can assure you don't want that. If you ever have that happen, and it's happened in the past, it never has a good outcome. That's how you get a fascist state, point blank. That's exactly what can happen. Let's listen to this for just a second. This is over in Scotland with this new law, and they're talking about J.K. Rowling being very concerned that when she arrives back to Scotland, she might be arrested for things she's posted on the X platform.
First of all, more on this outrageous anti-freedom, anti-liberty, fascistic law that has come into play in Scotland. Which will put you in prison for things that you might say, especially if you call a trans woman a bloke. Now, angry crowds gathered outside the Scottish Parliament yesterday to protest this. Apparently, I'm told by Scottish friends, thousands of Scots who all have a great sense of humour started bombarding the police saying that their mates, had said something horrible about trans people. It's not just trans people. It's discrimination on the basis of age, sexual leaning, etc., etc. Anyway, also J.K. Rowling said, I call a trans woman a man. I'm out of the country now. When I get back to Edinburgh, that's where she lives, she put #arrest me.
Yeah, I love it. She's basically our modern day suffragette. She's listed 10 trans people and basically just said no, actually she didn't. She played the game and pretended they were all women after and said, they're all men, obviously. It's just the best sort of list of trolling and sarcasm. And I want her to be arrested. I want to see that woman dragged to a Scottish police cell in handcuffs so the world can see how authoritarian and balmy this law is. It's how did this happen? I'll tell you how it happened, Kev, because people played the game.
Yes.
And Kev and I have decided we're not playing the game. Oh no, a man is a man, a woman is a woman. That's truth. You can't be arrested for telling the truth. Well, you can in Scotland. Absolutely madness. And on that note, I'm not playing any of the games anymore. If I want to criticize a religion, I will. If I want to talk about there being trends in certain crimes among certain nationalities and ethnicities, I will. Because that is called truth. Put it in your pipe and smoke it. I'm not playing anymore. I'm not going along with this mad carnival of lies and deceptions and gaslighting and breadcrumbing and censorship. It ends here.
Well, listen.
You don't have to play either.
Good for you. Thank God for you. And J.K. Rowling, of course, you're talking about Isla Bryson, the male bloke, double rapist who decided that he was a woman, and that idiot Nicola Sturgeon put him into a female prison, endangering all the vulnerable inmates there. Obviously, that decision was soon rescinded, and basically Nicola Sturgeon's career ignited and ended on the altar of that absurdity. And I'm reading all the papers today talking about playing the game. I'm reading all the papers, which are in a high state of indignation about this, particularly the Mail, quite rightly. And then they start writing, so here's some really bad examples of trans women and their behavior. And it says, Samantha so-and-so showed her penis to an 11-year-old boy. His. You can't have.
So if you think this cannot happen in America, I implore you, think again, because it can happen, and to some degree it is happening. We live in a society right now where you have the weaponization of the federal and state government taking out individuals they don't agree with. You have the Biden administration who is actively taking or trying to take out President Donald Trump. This is the exact same thing they just did in Russia. We talked about that one candidate, the attractive young lady with blonde hair, who they simply said they had the tribunal. They invited her in and they said, oh, your paperwork's not in order. You cannot run for president. And then, of course, the other guy, that Vladimir, whatever his name is, How did they handle him? Well, he tried to poison him. It didn't work. So when he got back to Mother Russia, they threw him in a prison. He wasn't dying quick enough, so they finally sent him up north to the Arctic Circle, one of the prisons up there, and surprisingly, he died. So that's really no different than what's going on here right now. You had them try to say, hey, you cannot run for office, because that's what happened in the great state of Colorado and in Maine, and other states were soon to follow. The first time that has ever happened since 1860, right before the Civil War. It happened to Abraham Lincoln. I'm sure you've heard of him. So this is truly amazing that it's happening. And what are they trying to do to Donald Trump right now? They're literally trying to throw him in jail, just like Russia did the other candidate that ended up dying in jail. And we can just imagine what in reality happened to him. So it's extremely troubling and extremely scary that this is going on. So if you think it can't happen, I implore you, think again, because it can happen. Let me take a couple of his comments. Then we have to talk about RFK and some interesting comments that he has just made. Sapphire, you're right. So Cohen testified he mortgaged his house and used that money for fixing. Yeah, the bottom line is this: as crazy as this whole case with Alvin Bragg sounds, the bottom line is this, as far as I understand it. The money that was paid to Stormy Daniels, was it paid by Donald Trump? And if it was, it's basically one of two questions. Was the money paid so that his wife would not find out? And if that's the case, it's perfectly legal. However, if the money was paid, if a jury determines the money was paid because Donald Trump was running for president that year in 2016 and he wanted to quiet this case down so it did not affect his chance to become president, then that is illegal. And that's what all of this stems from. And other prosecutors, federal prosecutors specifically, passed on prosecuting, or in this case, persecuting this case, because they knew there's no way to prove to a jury one way or the other exactly what the intent of President Donald Trump would have been. I mean, it's just obvious. It's very difficult to prove intent short of a recording or something of that nature where someone says, oh yeah, I did it because of this or did it because of that. It's really just that simple. But that's what we're facing. Linda, welcome to the chat. I heard about the Scott. Yeah, it's amazing. And it is crazy. You're exactly correct. Yeah, you go, girl. Absolutely. Yeah, English law. But if it's existing in one place, that's what they're trying to do, folks. These Democrats, these woke ideologues, they want us all living the great European dream. That's what this is all about. They want us all living in one world order, and they want us all to be living like Europeans. No way. Zach, teach tolerance was working, but now there seems to be a shift. Yeah, criminalize intolerance. That is exactly what's going on. If you state an opinion, you're in trouble. Do you know, I believe it's Germany right now, if you speak verses from the Bible, I'm not making this up, folks, you speak verses from the Bible pertaining to certain subjects, you run the risk, and there has been individuals arrested for hate crimes, for speaking something in the Bible. For example, speaking something to do with sex or something to do with homosexuality or something, that type of subject matter. They've had people they've arrested and prosecuted under the laws that they have there. Go ahead and Google it. You'll see what I'm talking about. Absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. Sapphire, the Dems preach tolerance. Yeah, they are very intolerant if you don't exactly agree with them. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, Melinda. Yeah, I'm following Jesus too. I can promise you that. And it is just very sad what's going on. And hopefully we all can get together, talk about it, and make the change that we need to make. So let's switch over and let's talk about RFK. This is really interesting. And in my opinion, very good news. And you're going to see RFK. Now, I don't agree with him on a lot. He is definitely a little out there on some of his beliefs and some of his views, but I got to tell you, he's really nailed it this time, and he really PO'd CNN in this interview you're about to see. And what he's going to do is he's going to speak truth to power. And what he's going to say is effectively what we've been talking about. And that is, you know how they keep talking about Donald Trump being, Donald Trump is some kind of savage. He's some kind of evil individual that if he takes office, he's going to destroy the country. I mean, they said that about him the first time around. But what they're trying to tell us this time around is that democracy is on the ballot. Well, I agree, democracy is on the ballot, but the problem is with Joe Biden. You have a president who has weaponized the federal, state government, and other individuals. You have a federal government now who is literally leaning on companies like Twitter/X and Facebook to take down posts that they object to or they think are false or whatever. And matter of fact, the Supreme Court is currently reviewing this particular matter. I'm afraid that they're not going to rule the way I hope that they would rule on this particular case. But folks, let's be honest about it. If you get a phone call from the federal government saying, hey, I'd like you to consider taking this down, gee golly, oh my, would you do it? Can you think about it? You and I both know that might be their words, but in reality, if we don't take it down, we're going to have a very big problem in a hurry. You know it and I know it. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court at this point does not seem to hear it the same way you and I can hear that. But this is an interview just given by RFK Jr. to CNN, and they like to had a conniption. We're going to listen to the relevant part here. So let's listen to it together, and then we'll talk about it.
A moment ago, you said you essentially see Trump and Biden as the same, different issues. But do you really believe that when people talk about the threat to democracy that Trump poses, do you really think that that is an equal evil to Biden?
I mean, listen, I can make the argument that President Biden is a much worse threat to democracy. And the reason for that is President Biden is the first candidate in history, the first president in history that has used the federal agencies to censor political speech, so to censor his opponent. I can say that because I just won a case in the Federal Court of Appeals and now before the Supreme Court. It shows that he started censoring not just me. For 37 hours after he took the oath of office, he was censoring me. No president in the country has ever done that. The greatest threat to democracy is not somebody who questions election returns, but a president of the United States who used the power of his office to force the social media companies, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to open a portal and give access to that portal to the FBI, to the CIA, to the IRS, to CISA, to NIH, to censor his political critics. President Biden, for the first president in history, to use his power over the Secret Service to deny Secret Service protection to one of his political opponents for political reasons. He's weaponizing the federal agencies. Those are really critical threats to democracy.
Donald Trump, of course, tried to overturn a free and fair election. He tried to overturn one, right? He's still fighting in court.
Yes.
How is that not a threat to democracy?
That's a false narrative. Again, he did not try to overturn anything. It's part of his duties as the president to make sure there is an orderly transfer of power. And as the Supreme Court has recently even said, any president's going to have an eye towards his own reelection. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, that's human nature. And to say he tried to overturn it, as we have talked about many times, the election laws from state to state vary. They're very convoluted and sometimes very confusing. They're not uniform. Each state is in charge of their own elections. Donald Trump did not do anything illegal, despite what they keep trying to tell us.
Democracy.
Well, I think that is a threat to democracy. If him trying to overthrow the election clearly is a threat to democracy. But the question was, who is a worse threat to democracy? And what I would say is, I'm not going to answer that question, but I can argue that President Biden is, because the First Amendment, Aaron, is the most important. Adams and Hamilton and Madison said, we put the guarantee of freedom of expression in the First Amendment because all of our other constitutional rights depend on it. If you have a government that can silence its opponent, it has license for any atrocity.
Amen.
So just to be clear, you're saying you could make an argument that President Biden is a worse threat to democracy than Donald Trump. That's what you just said.
But who else has ever tried to send, what president in history has ever tried to censor political opponents? What president has weaponized the federal agency? When my father came into the Justice Department, the first week he was there, He got all of the branch and division attorneys together, and he said, whatever we do, we are not going to use the power of the Justice Department for
Well, Trump,
political
of course, has
reasons.
said that he
And
would
what
do
we're
that.
seeing
He has said that he
of
would
course,
do that.
and that is reprehensible.
And he is the only president who's tried to overthrow the results of an election.
Well, you know what? Let me say something about that. I'm not going to defend President.
That's not true either. He's not the first person to try to overthrow an election. That's just false. And I have videos that I think I've shared before. If not, I'm going to be sharing them in the days to come, where you can see the Democrats have engaged in the same type of dialect where this election's been stolen, something's wrong. We need to, as a matter of fact, I'll take a look at it here in just a second. I know exactly where it's at. So let's continue.
Trump on that. That was appalling. And there's many things that President Trump has done that are appalling. But in 2001, we had an election stolen in this country during the Bush-Gore election. In 2004, I wrote an award-winning article for Rolling Stone that showed how that election was stolen from John Kerry. So I don't think, and most Americans agree with me about 2001, that it was a stolen election from the Democratic Party candidate. So I don't think people who say that the election is stolen, not that we shouldn't make pariahs of those people. We shouldn't demonize them. We shouldn't vilify them. What we should be doing is saying, let's all get together, Republicans and Democrats, and fix the election system so that it cannot be fixed, so that we're the exemplary democracy of the world. We ought to, Las Vegas, let me tell you this, Las Vegas is built on machines that can count and never make mistakes. Can't we make an election machine, and can't we have an electoral process?
That's the main part of this interview that I wanted you to see. Right on the money, right on the money. The clear problem with the election, the clear threat to our democracy is not Donald Trump, it's Joe Biden and the actions that he is continuing to take. I would add to that list the border. We have an open border right now. What country has a country that has an open border? It just doesn't exist. Without borders, you don't have a country. It's really that simple. You have a commander-in-chief right now who he just absolutely refuses to do his job to secure, protect the country. It's just that simple. That is clearly a threat to our democracy, to our entire homeland, and shame on him. Now, I think I have the right video right here. You always hear that, oh, it's Donald Trump that did something terrible on January 6th. The Democrats would never do that. Take a look at this video. I believe this is the right one, but let's take a look at this and let's see what our friends on the other side have said. So here we go, and then we'll talk about it.
NBC's Talent claimed their issue with Ronna McDaniel was her ties to Donald Trump and his election denial. But the network has on guests who are Democrats often, and they cast doubt on election results. The RNC compiled this. Watch.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
And the only way they could win the election was to stop the voting in Florida.
After the election, when you stole the election, you came back here and said, get over it. No, we're not going to get over it.
They turned the Department of Civil Rights and the Justice Department into the voter suppression division.
Without voter suppression, Stacey Abrams would be the governor of Georgia.
The election was not fair. The process was not fair.
If Stacey Abrams doesn't win in Georgia, they stole it. It's clear. It's clear.
Jen Psaki, former Biden press secretary turned MSNBC anchor, peddled the conspiracy theory that the Hunter laptop story was Russian disinformation. There's her tweet. Hunter Biden story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former Intel officials say. Can we get a name of anybody who still says that after all of the clarifications and retractions? Not an apology, mind you, but all of those journalists who weren't journaling the truth. Can we get that? Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor, former Republican congressman from Utah. All right, here we go. Your thoughts.
I always find it rich, Harris, when the people that preach diversity, equity, inclusion are the very first people to deny people, to push them aside because they've got diversity of thought. And what they did and how they did this to Ronna McDaniel is so abhorrent.
That was pretty well the main part I wanted you to hear. Isn't that something, huh? When I saw that, I'm like, I have to go ahead and clip that out and put it in my library collection because that is so rich. You always hear him say, oh, Donald Trump is this, Donald Trump did that. They've done the same exact thing, if not worse. And you just saw the video proof of it. Absolutely outrageous. Hey, I have to thank Zach and take a moment and thank him. Appreciate, Zach, you're always helping out the channel here, and I appreciate it. I appreciate each and every one of you that have supported the channel and contribute to it. And Zach, you never let me down, and I appreciate that. I honestly do. Folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap it right here. We've been on almost 2 hours, so I have a lot coming out. We're going to be back within the next day or two. Have a lot of different videos coming out. I think you're going to enjoy them. I have a whole series of videos coming out pertaining to President Joe Biden and his age. And I'm asking the following: is a vote for Joe Biden actually a vote for President Kamala Harris? What are the statistical odds that a president that is 81, 82 years of age, if and when he would, hopefully not, but sworn in as the next president, reelected in other words, make it 4 more years to make it to 86 years of age. Very interesting stuff that I got coming down the pike. So if you're still with me, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Let this message spread around. It helps the algorithm and it reaches more people. I appreciate each and every one of you being with me on all the channels, Facebook, YouTube. We got someone on Twitch. And of course, X, you guys are all great. I appreciate you. I always say, keep that mind free, never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.